Right, so hello and welcome to Season 2, Episode 6 of me and ADHD podcast. In today's episode, and in the middle of probably my usual ADHD-imposed rambling, I'm probably going to go off topic and completely forgetting the reason why I started talking in the first place. We're going to be talking about mindfulness, and in particular, how and if us ADHDers can make use of this technique. So, here with me today is Mindfulness Coach Jeorgia. Welcome, Jeorgia.
Hello, hi, I'm so excited to be here.
I'm glad you're here. I'm glad we're having this conversation.
Awesome.
At last. Right, now, mindfulness is a new, well, it's not new, it's been around for thousands of years as far as I've been reading.
Absolutely.
But I'm guessing it's sort of new to the mainstream conversation, I guess.
Yeah, I would say so. So its foundations are really, Buddhism. So, those kind of Buddhist beliefs. It's been around for, as you say, thousands and thousands of years. Lots of kind of yogic background that's connected to mindfulness. But it's definitely become part of more of the mainstream media in the last, probably, I would say 3 or 4 years.
Okay.
And I think part of that, which is really good, is that there is a much bigger conversation happening now about mental health and well-being than there has ever been. So as part of that, we are more mindful of our own mindsets. And actually, as part of that, then mindfulness kind of comes, as part and parcel almost of that conversation, which makes me very excited because actually, even myself, I didn't discover mindfulness until about 4 years ago. So yeah, it's really cool.
So you discovering that as well. I mean, tell us a little about yourself. Who is Jeorgia?
Who is Jeorgia? So she's now a mindfulness coach. So I am a late diagnosed ADHD myself. So I wasn't diagnosed until I was nearly 32.
Welcome to the club.
Yes, so many of us. And I spent a lot of my adult life feeling like I was a teenager in an adult's body that should know how to function like an adult and just couldn't quite manage in the way that everybody else seemed to, when everybody else did it so naturally, and it just seemed to come to them. And I constantly felt like I was failing and that I was hiding behind this massive mask of pretending that I was coping, but I was just on this hamster wheel constantly. So in my professional life, for at least probably 10 years or so of my professional life. So from when I was 18 and I left college, I went and worked, in a specific field. And I very much took that really seriously. I think I had spent a lot of my educational life feeling like I needed to prove myself because I was, trying extra hard. So I really put that in the workplace and I really worked very, very hard and I masked a massive amount. And I did quite well. I managed to, end up in lots of managerial positions, leading big teams. But in my personal life, I couldn't budget. I couldn't keep my washing going. I couldn't feed myself. I had limited to no sleep. I would run my car on 0 petrol on my way to nearly being late to every meeting that I was ever at. My life was complete chaos. And then when I went to work, I would put on this professional cloak almost to completely hide that fact. And I was like a swan, actually on the surface level, I looked like I was coping and really thriving in my career. I did 2 degrees whilst working full time, and in quite difficult positions as well at that time. And I just pushed it and buried it. But I would get home and I lived with one of my best friends for a long time. And she would just be like, "You are such chaos. Your life is so chaotic." And she just couldn't understand how I couldn't even sort of like put together a dinner or, go food shopping or know what days our bills came out. I had to send her all of my money for bills and things. And she had to sort all of that out because I just couldn't function. But yet I was leading multiple teams of people in different locations in my day-to-day life. So I had this big paradox. And the reason that I discovered mindfulness is because doing all of that over a very long period of time and creating that work identity, I almost had a bit of a split of myself. So my work identity and my personal identity were so different from one another. They were like the 2 extremes of the coin, really. And it was really hard to keep that up and keep that going. And over a long period of time, I burnt out massively. And during, the last few months of my role within that particular career, I was being made redundant, and I was aware that I was being made redundant. And I had this wobble of like, well, who am I if I'm not this person with this career? Because I've put everything into it and I can barely eat, sleep, or drink outside of this. So what am I going to do? And I completely just, yeah, fell apart really. But again, I was still managing teams of people. I was still trying to put this face on. And I had a manager at the time who said to me, we've got this course coming up. It's an 8-week course. I think it'd be really good for you. You're massively stressed. I can see, whether you want to admit it or not, there's a lot going on behind the surface. And I think it would be really good for you. And I was so offended. I was like, how dare you make me go on this course? What a load of rubbish. I don't want to do this. And I had to, take time out of the office to go every week. And I begrudgingly would drive down the road and think, this is a waste of my time. I've got so much to do. I've got these emails and these things to do. And literally from the second that I walked in this room, there was all these beautiful sound baths and herbal teas, and I was like, I don't belong here. This is awful. Why am I here? And I sat down in this circle, and we had to sniff the tea and talk about the weather and all these things. And I just thought it was the biggest load of hippie rubbish ever. And but within 45 minutes of me being there, it was like this woman completely transformed my life. It was incredible. She did a breathing exercise with us very, very early on in the session, and my brain was quiet for the first time maybe ever in my adult life. And I thought, I feel like there's something to this. This is an unfamiliar feeling. And
That's
then
good.
every week I started to go, and I really would look forward to it. It was like my solace in the week. It became my thing that I was doing. And then she would give us homework to do, and it became my hyperfixation really, because I suddenly was like, who knows what I'm going to do or what I'm going to be after this, but this is really interesting to me. And I just realized that it helped me not necessarily to switch my brain off, but to just quiet the noise a little bit
Yeah, yeah.
and to help me actually feel in my body all of a sudden, instead of feeling like I was in, on Mars or out of space walking around. I actually felt grounded for the first time in years and years and years. So that kind of was my introduction to mindfulness. And off of the back of that, I became obsessed with it. So initially, I think friends, family members, etc., just thought it was this hyperfixation that I would kind of grow out of once I got into a new career and things like that. But actually, COVID happened right at the cusp of me getting made redundant. So it was a really good opportunity for me to have not only a mindset shift, but a bit of a shift of actually, what do I want to be? What do I want to do? And I did go into teaching for a bit, which actually taught me a lot about myself and a lot about the things, within my own education that didn't work
Okay.
so well in the past. And that's really where I discovered that I had ADHD, kind of going back to university and things like that. So it all started to marry together. And then, off the back of it, I realized a lot of my managerial experience, I'd always got amazing feedback from my teams about the support that I offered them and the coaching that I would do with them, just kind of naturally, really. And I'd done a few coaching courses and stuff. And then it kind of all married together. So I did a few mindfulness courses. And then before I knew it, it all came together. And then here we are now. But I can't believe that was me all those years ago. It's really, it does blow my mind a little bit.
Blimey, okay, that's one hell of a journey. But I know it's good that you've found something that works for you. I mean, really works for you.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I mean, this is what it's all about. It's what we want more people to find something that works for them.
Yeah.
So, no, that's I can imagine walking into a room with all the teas and stuff like that.
The flary pants.
Yes,
and
But I was gonna mention about hippies and all that, but I thought no, I won't. But you've done it anyway.
I said it already.
But no, it is interesting now. I mean, I've been reading quite a bit about, not say loads, but I have been reading about it, and there is a lot more talk in the ADHD world about it now. I looked at a lot of the big sort of websites, and they're all mentioning it and things like that. So it's good that I guess organisations like that are on board with it as well.
Yeah.
And it's not just like, over to one side or something. No, come and try us. We're so cool. It is literally a sought after thing. And it's, I guess, well, got everything on the word now. It's something that's, they do think it's worthwhile doing. It does help. So, so, I mean, what is it though? I mean, in practical terms, I guess, what,
I
you know,
So practically, so a lot of mindfulness is about acceptance. So it's about accepting the here and now and learning to be more present. And when we have ADHD, we spend so much time not in the present. We're either ruminating on the past and thinking about all of the things, overthinking conversations that we've had, things that we are not proud of, that we've maybe done impulsively or that we've said. Our emotional regulation can be a little bit all over the place.
yep,
And with that, we can spend a lot of time in the past. We can also spend a lot of time being very anxious about the future. So we do a lot of comparison. They say comparison is the biggest stealer of joy, and it absolutely is. So the thing about mindfulness is it helps us to be acceptant of right now without so much judgment. So
okay,
it's learning to give yourself more grace and understanding. And I think learning that you potentially have ADHD or you're neurodivergent in some way, particularly as an adult, and then learning to be more acceptant of yourself, it marries together so well.
yeah,
Because actually, there's so much of our lives that we've spent berating and hating ourselves and trying to be neurotypical when actually our brains cannot work that way, and they don't work that way. And it's amazing that they don't work that way, because there's a million other things that we can do that are amazing. So it's that real heartfelt acceptance of, okay, I've made mistakes. Okay, things maybe haven't gone the way that I have hoped them to. Okay, emotionally, I did not deal with that situation very well today, but I'm proud of myself for. And it's being able to have more gratitude for the small things in your life and the small wins, the glimmers, those little things that actually not, they don't necessarily cost anything, but they mean a lot to us. So
yeah,
a massive part of mindfulness is being more present so that we're less in our head, which means that we ruminate less, being more acceptant of what is, recognizing that actually where we are is okay, and having more grace for ourselves, and then being able to get out of our heads more, which means that we're more focused, we're more able to organize ourselves, organize our thoughts. So actually, different mindfulness techniques, depending on what they are, some of them are very good for calming you down, some of them are really good for helping you focus and kind of organize your thoughts. Some of them are really good for being able to actually just emotionally let stuff out. So sometimes you
okay,
need that real emotional release, almost like a factory reset, so that you can, shake it off and then be able to come back to base and start again. Sometimes we can really struggle with our emotional regulation. I think that is one of the biggest challenges for having ADHD, as an adult in society, because it's quite there's a lot of stigma with that. There's a lot of shame that we carry about our emotions, and not wanting to show that we have these levels of emotions that might be perceived as quite high, or potentially even, it's almost like a thermostat being switched right
yeah,
right
yeah,
on,
yeah,
but too far sometimes. Or we can go the other way and we can dissociate, and we can almost have the thermostat too low in some situations. So it's being able to be present, be less in our heads. The other thing that mindfulness is very good at is, as much as technology is incredible and amazing, we can get really, really lost in it with our brains.
yes,
And we can spend a lot of time in this vortex of technology. And sometimes mindfulness is about getting outside, being in nature, recognizing the feeling of the grass on your feet, the feeling of cold water on your skin or on your face, and therefore actually being out in the natural elements, and being out in nature and light, our circadian rhythms. It helps us sleep more, and that's something that with ADHD we struggle with. So that
yeah,
every aspect of ADHD and the things that we can find difficult, there is an aspect of mindfulness that can support it. It's not necessarily going to, nothing is going to be wave a magic wand. It's the same as medication. Actually, that can be really helpful for some people. It's not a cure, because it's not there to cure us. Actually, it's there to support and accommodate us so that we can manage things. But actually, it doesn't work for everyone. And it's the same with mindfulness. I wouldn't say that mindfulness is for every single person in the world, but I think it's more accessible than people realize. For me, I didn't think it was accessible for my brain. I thought mindfulness was a monk sitting on a hilltop in Nepal, staring out at some mountains. The idea of meditating, when they told me that this course I was going to have to meditate and my homework was to meditate, I laughed. I was like, my brain is never silent. That is never going to happen. Even now, years later, after practicing, when I meditate, my brain is not entirely silent. Sometimes it is. It's taken a lot of practice, but there's still noise there. There's just less of it. And it's less intense and it's less hurtful to myself or hateful to myself. I've learned what is a thought and what is fact. So a lot of the time
Yeah.
when we're ruminating, we've got all these thoughts jumbled up going in our head a million miles an hour. It's kind of like when you're able to sit and be present and really aware, oh, that thought's coming in. That's really interesting. Rather than taking it on board and then running with that thought, everyone hates me, whatever it might be, we've got a million things like that. Just sitting and going, that's really interesting that I'm thinking that right now. I wonder where that's come from. Accepting it. Okay, I'm thinking that right now. That's all right. That's fine. It's okay for me to think that. I don't need to take it in. I don't necessarily need to do anything with it. I can just accept it. I can maybe breathe through it. If there's some emotions that are coming out of me during it, then I might even do some deep breath work to bring that emotion up so I can let go. I might sit and journal and work out where that might have come from, what's triggered me in that situation. So there's so many different things mindfulness can do. Yeah.
I guess it's kind of like working out where you need it the most.
Yeah.
And then obviously what works for you as well. I mean, like for me personally, when I got my diagnosis, it was the biggest relief I've ever had. And I know a lot of people, they go through the denial thing, they go through the what if, and things were different, and it's hard to take on board.
Yeah.
I didn't have that route. I'm still in this euphoric bubble of I have answers.
Acceptance.
Yeah. So it was like I have answers. It was everything now, looking at everything in my life made sense.
Yeah.
All those decisions, all the things I did, all the things I didn't do, all the struggles, everything just made sense. And all those people that said all those things about me are wrong. And this is what the reason is, not my fault.
Yeah.
And I within sort of days, I was like, I'll just cut myself a load of slack, from the past. So that was good for me, and I enjoyed that feeling. I'm very good at cutting myself slack in the past, but I'm not at the stage where I cut myself slack
Day to
now,
day.
and for the future as well. So that's something I need to work on. And I know one thing people do have as well. They do talk a lot about the ADHD rage and everything like that.
Oh yeah.
Now I don't personally get that. If anything, I internalize everything. Okay,
Yeah.
But for the people who do have that rage, who do externalize it,
Yeah.
what sort of technique would work for that?
Have you ever heard of somatic movement?
I have. Not in
Yeah.
massive details, but yes, I have, yeah.
So the idea is a lot of the time we do exactly what you've mentioned. So we internalize our emotions. So we feel an emotion, we feel embarrassed maybe by that emotion, we feel shame about that emotion, or we feel shame about our reaction to that emotion, and we bury it and we bury it and we bury it. And a lot of the time our body is storing that energy. So emotion is like energy in motion. It's stuck somewhere in our bodies.
Okay,
And
yeah.
sometimes it just needs to move. So we can have an incredible amount of emotion stuck, particularly in our hips. So our hips tend to be an area You might have some people that say, the first time that I ever went to yoga, I absolutely sobbed my heart out in a certain position and I couldn't work out why I was crying. The reason for that was the emotion being stored in that particular area of the body, being able to fully relax, particularly when you use certain breath. You get into that really relaxed state and your body feels safe because it's not in fight or flight to release that emotion and for that emotion to come up. And sometimes might be an emotion that you've had stored in there since you were 8 years old that you didn't even know was there, buried under the surface. So somatic movement is all about kind of slow movement, or it's kind of seen as very almost like primal movement, really,
Okay.
to be able to let go of your emotions. And there's lots of different what we call modalities. So people have different versions of it. So sometimes there's things called like spinal movement, where there's particular areas you can go into very, very deep breathing, and then you'll have a practitioner come around and touch certain areas of your body, like particularly your back, and it will release emotion. You can do it through somatic dance, which is something that I do a lot of. So being able to do certain movements, and you can listen to any music. So this is where I think mindfulness is way more accessible than people
Okay.
necessarily realize. Anything that is your favorite song, music is very emotive, isn't it? So you think about a song that you really like, the lyrics have meaning, you associate it a lot of the time with a specific memory or maybe even a specific time period in your life. You can use all of that energy when you're then moving in it, and you'll be amazed if you manage to get your breath into a deep enough state and really get into a rhythm with it and to shake it off and to use somatic movement. There is likely, very, very likely, to be an emotional release. You might have an emotional release of joy. It isn't always a sad release. You might start laughing and think, why am I like hysterically laughing? I feel so strange right now. But it's really powerful. And actually, it's something that you can just do at home in your living room. When you're cleaning, stick on a good song. Something that it can be really powerful, that is very simple for anyone to do, is to shake. So
Okay.
if you think about an animal in the wild, so let's say you've got an antelope in Africa that has been chased by a lion and it gets away from the lion. When it's been chased by the lion, it's gone into fight or flight. The only thing that the antelope is focused on is survival. It doesn't care about eating or sleeping or resting or thinking about anything else other than getting away from that lion. When it gets away from the lion, it's panting, it's very, stressed. And you will see that that antelope will shake its entire body. What the antelope is doing is shaking the emotion out. It's letting go of that emotion, which is what we can also do. But it's something that no doubt thousands of years ago we naturally had within our own modalities. And it's something that's been, translated over time differently or been lost. But it's a really, really simple technique that we can use, being able to shake it out. So if someone is feeling rage, for example, that's something that I definitely connect with as an ADHDer. And I can feel very, very either a lot of kind of sorrow and deep emotion, or I can go from 0 to 100 and have that real intense angry feeling. I will put on some heavy music, some music that brings out frustration in me, from a time period maybe where I wasn't having a great time in my life, and I will shake to my heart's content. I'll shake my head, I'll shake my arms, my hands, and just let it go. If you need to let it out, sometimes as well, our throats can be blocked. So actually, there's a lot of shame around shouting, isn't there? There's a lot of shame around screaming, around letting out our voice. But actually, if you're in a safe environment to be able to do that, that's the perfect place to do it. And it can be really, really powerful.
You do know I'm going to YouTube antelopes now. I better see a shake.
Yeah. You'll be finding gifts. But it's the same with a lot of wild animals when they get chased. So even like deer, in the wild, they shake it off. It's this primal instinct that we have to shake, to let things out. And in
Yeah.
society, it's not deemed as something that is particularly socially acceptable. So people aren't going to do it. But actually, some people stim. Actually, that is similar to shaking. It's that sense of having motion, energy, and motion.
that's, to be fair, that's probably the best way to have said it to me, actually. It's like a stim.
Yeah.
Because that just clicks it all together, puts it all together.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, yeah, okay, all right. I will be. I don't know if I'm going to be shaking as much, but I will. Yeah, I will. I'll try a little dance tomorrow, I think, probably.
Awesome. But that's the amazing thing, with our brains, we can be sensory seekers or we can be sensory avoiders. There are certain things that we might really not feel comfortable actually,
Yeah.
or when we're particularly stressed or overwhelmed, are going to make us worse. So for me, loud noises when I'm feeling really, really stressed, I've got to be in the right frame of mind for it. So although listening to music and letting it out is really great, I've got to kind of prepare myself for it. If someone else put loud music on when I was feeling like that, I would be insanely triggered. Like, no, I don't want to hear that. If I put it on, it's okay. But having that sensory seeking. So, if you recognize that there are particular things that you seek when you are stressed to calm you down,
Yeah.
and that will connect to any of your senses, that is potentially a stim that you are using to re-regulate your nervous system. So it's your brain's way of recognizing that you are, you're flooded with cortisol, that stress hormone, you're feeling quite overwhelmed, and it's in the background subconsciously trying to calm you down. So that, socially, I think it's becoming much more accepted for people to stim in public, and
Yeah.
it's not seen as something that is frowned upon in the same way as it maybe was 10 years ago. But people don't always feel comfortable with big stims. So it might be that you work out what you like to do when you stim, and then what could be maybe a toned down version of it when you are in public, but also being able to, again, it falls down to that mindful acceptance.
Yeah.
Actually accepting that that's an amazing part of my brain that is telling me, if you carry on like this, you're going to burn out. So I'm allowing this energy to come out of you so that you can transmute it into something more positive. So your brain is actually protecting you by doing that. And that's an amazing thing rather than a negative thing.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. It's a real huge learning curve, the whole ADHD journey. Because you don't, I guess for most ADHDers, especially late diagnosed, it's not okay. So, I'm having issues. I'll get assessed. I'm ADHD, and then you crack on. You deep dive.
Yeah.
It's and work, and you research and study and learn everything about yourself and about ADHD and everything. And it's so much to take in, but at the same time, pretty much everything that you learn is helping you.
Always.
It's an amazing thing, and I love taking on new things, and I love learning new things and understanding new things. So I have to understand it to really grasp it.
Yeah.
And sometimes it takes just a few words, and it's like a stim. Weirdly enough, that's what I needed.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, and like I say, I'll put things into practice, and I'll do all those things. I mean, I'll have a little laugh and a joke about it, but I'll do these things, and I will find out what works for me, and put it into practice, and that's what you got to do. I never used these, and I'm going through work with these. I've got them through the day, and people ask me what are they for, and I'm like, I'm just stopping shouting at you right now.
Yeah.
And it works.
Yeah.
So it's brilliant.
I'm all for it. I'm so passionate about the fact that society finally is catching up with the fact that actually the more that people are themselves, authentically themselves, the more that everyone in society is going to thrive. Because the more that people mask and they push down their true selves and they don't feel that they can be themselves and they don't identify with themselves, the more likely it is that that things are going to turn negative, that it's going to come out in a really not positive way, when all of that energy can be used for creativity, recognizing difference. Incredible. All of our brains work differently. That's fantastic. This person is amazingly logical at these things. This person is amazingly creative at these things. Let's marry those together instead of trying to fit everybody into a box.
Yeah.
Why are we doing that?
Absolutely.
What is the purpose of that?
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think it's, like I say, people talk about these things now a lot more, and it's becoming to be a lot more sociably acceptable, I guess. And I think we need to keep on talking, because we've still got a way to go.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
But it's good that there's movement now. Like I say, 10 years ago, before I was diagnosed, I had, as a lot of people, depression, anxiety.
Oh yeah.
didn't talk.
All of the above.
Yeah, didn't talk to anyone about that. My wife, yes, but family, friends, no, because the stigma, and because of I really didn't have any answers, and it's hard keeping that to yourself, and the whole masking thing. When you have to put on a mask, and I know it depends on your surroundings, be it the school you're at, the family you have, the friends, the work, whatever it is. But when you're masking 24/7, it will never be a positive thing.
No, never.
It will never be. So you have to have that outlet. You have to be able to take the mask off, and to do that, you need to put things in place to help you to get through certain times of days, situations.
I think if you don't, you dissociate. You become so separate from your lived experience. You're like a sim that, you're the one that's kind of controlling the sim. When you're masking, you're telling the sim what to do. You're not actually living it. You're not doing it yourself, and you feel so dissociated and disconnected from who you are. I know for myself, I really struggled in relationships, whether that be friendships or intimate relationships, because I had this professional persona where everything was very, very put together and successful and confident, and I didn't have that. I was people pleasing so badly, because I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what my thoughts were, what my opinions were, what my likes and my dislikes were. Even now, I struggle sometimes. If somebody says to me, what's your favorite song, genre of music, film? Depends what day it is. Depends. I go into the hyperfixation of, okay, well, what subgenre? What like I overthink it so much that I'm like, okay, and what am I doing when I'm listening to that music? Am I in the car? Am I cooking dinner? Am I walking? I find it really hard to differentiate that, and I think I've always struggled socially with my overthinking brain. Someone might ask me a question and I'm 10 steps ahead of it, and then I butt in and I will finish their sentence for them. And in relationships, it would be like, well, you're not listening to me because you're not even letting me speak. And it's really hard. So mindfulness does teach you, and it doesn't mean that I'm still brilliant at it, because my friends and family will vouch that I am not. However, I'm aware of when I have done it, or I'm aware of when I'm about to do it, and I can feel that impulsivity wanting to come out, because in my brain I'm like, if I don't say this thing, I'm going to forget it forever.
Yeah.
And that's it, and it's gone, and it will never come back. And it might have been the best idea I've ever had, and it's gone. Or I have also definitely noticed since my diagnosis that talking to other neurodivergent people, we converse in a very similar way. So we will have a conversation, and somebody described it once, and I thought it was just the most incredible description. It's like neurotypical people play a game of tennis, and they're back and forth, back and forth, back and forth.
Yeah.
Neurodivergent people are playing a game of basketball. So they're bouncing their own ball, talking about the thing they're interested in. And then the other person comes along and goes, oh, I've got a story about that. And then they take the ball and they bounce the ball. And then you just go back and forth like that. And occasionally you'll agree on something and someone will put the ball in the hoop and you'll celebrate it together. and then you'll go off and it will carry on. And it's so true. I
Yeah,
love that.
yeah. That's good.
Mm.
I'm not sure I remember all that, however, but yeah, that is good. But yeah, it is different talking to neurodivergent people.
Yeah.
Before, and I've said this quite a few times on my podcast, that before my diagnosis, I didn't have a voice.
No.
Social anxiety. I took myself away, and I struggle. I'm not your stereotypical. A lot of ADHDers talk really quickly, but really confidently. They pronounce the words really well, and
It's a verbal. Yeah.
I am not that. I struggle with my words most of the time. I can't even remember what it's called now, but I forget words.
Yeah.
And because of that, it's hard to talk to people, and I then shy away because I don't want to have a conversation because I'm gonna take a half an hour to, get 2 sentences out half the time.
Yeah.
So, but with neurodivergent people on this podcast, when I found my voice, it was just like, I don't care.
It's amazing. I love it.
And it's nice because there's like an automatic level of acceptance,
Yeah.
although you haven't got the same journey and you don't, I'm very, very inattentive, and you might be really hyperactive, but we can still sit here and have a conversation.
Exactly.
And you're going to talk over me all the time, but I'm going to accept it because I know the score. Before my diagnosis, you butting in would have drove me insane.
Yeah.
But it doesn't now. It really, really doesn't now. Because I have the answers. I know why.
You've got the understanding behind. Yeah.
And I am going to forget what I'm going to say.
Oh yeah.
But there's the acceptance there, and it's my podcast. I can edit it and I can do whatever I want.
Yeah,
but it's good to have that, and it is good to talk. And like I say, and sharing the ideas, and along with that, the mindfulness as well. I'll put that into place, and I'll talk about it, and I'll definitely speak to you again about it as well.
Very excited.
It's me dancing.
Yeah. I feel like I knew it. I knew you'd enjoy it.
But it's all a part of the arsenal that we need to help, because it's not, because it's such a diverse condition, or whatever you like to call it. Not one thing's gonna work.
It's not a one size fits all approach. It shouldn't be a one size fits all approach. It should.
No, it shouldn't. I mean, the medication is brilliant when it works. Okay. Like you said, doesn't work for everybody. Sometimes it works really well, but the side effects are just too much to take. And sometimes you can't take medication because of whatever other health conditions you got. But when it's working, it is great. But it doesn't fix everything about your symptoms.
No.
It's worked really well for me for what I wanted it to do in, I guess, the situations that I'm in.
Yeah.
So my working memory is a lot better. With family life is a lot easier to cope with. I was getting really overwhelmed. I had no idea why, but I can hold off a lot longer now, which is great. And I can read a book I've never read.
Incredible.
Until I started the medication, I've never read a book, and my education was just rubbish because I couldn't read a book, basically.
Yeah.
Just couldn't retain that information, and so it is great. But if there's a lot of noise around, I'm not going to be able to read the book. I still need it to be fairly quiet. If there's a real stressful time at work or at home or something like that, it totally overrides the medication. You know what I mean? So it's not perfect. So you need to put other things in place, other strategies in place, and there's going to be a lot of them. And I put loads in from way before I got diagnosed.
Yeah.
Because being inattentive, I forget, and all the rest. So, I mean, I went through the stage at work with the whole writing everything in a diary. Well, I mean, which is
the amount of diaries I've had in my life.
And it's great when you're possibly at work and you have that diary with you, this big A4
Yeah,
diary and all
beautiful.
that.
Yeah, it's going to change my life. When you purchase it, you're like, this diary is going to change everything, and it changes nothing.
Because you don't take it around with you all the time, and it
No.
just doesn't work. But I gradually got onto my phone.
Yeah.
So, I put everything on my phone. And when I don't put it on my phone,
I'm the same.
things will go wrong. But
Yeah.
everything goes down there. Reminders throughout the day, with alarms going off throughout the day. So and it works for me.
Yeah.
But it works for me because I know, even if I didn't do that, I have my phone with me all the time.
Yeah.
So it's that's what I use. Nothing else would even come close, because nothing else I have with me all the time.
No.
If I go downstairs, I'm taking my phone. If I go upstairs, I take my phone. If I quickly pop to the car to get something, my phone's coming with me. My phone is always with me. So, and I never lose my phone because it's always with me. So I've been doing that for years, and that has helped me so much, because without it, I would, I'd be in trouble a lot more than I am now. But there are other things as well that I do. I've worked out that I need quietness. Even if it's 5-10 minutes, I'll come upstairs and just lie on the bed. Couldn't explain why at the time, but I just needed peace. I just,
very mindful.
And now, in a position I am now, I do that a lot more.
Yeah.
So I will do what I need a lot more, and I won't let people tell me that I can't.
I think once you have that diagnosis, it's like you said earlier, I was similar to you in the sense that I had this massive, overwhelming relief of, oh my God, my whole life makes sense. I'm not broken. I just operate in a different way, and it's okay. There was for me a bit of a grieving process within that, because I did very much ruminate on the what could have been if I'd, not necessarily if my brain was different, but if I'd have known about it earlier, the tools that I could have developed to have managed better in some of the things that I really, really struggled with, particularly, mental health wise and confidence wise and things like that.
Yeah.
But actually, I wouldn't change anything about the journey now, because it's all part of that learning process, isn't it? And I think something that is amazing when you have that diagnosis is you learn, or even not necessarily a diagnosis, because not everybody is fortunate enough to be at that position yet. We know that NHS waiting lists across the country are horrifically long, and some people may choose for that reason not to get diagnosed or to go down that route, but they are aware that actually for them, they recognize those symptoms in themselves and they can see that. We learn to advocate a little bit more for our needs and to feel less guilty about that. And I think that in itself is very mindful. It's the acceptance of, this is how I'm feeling right now in this moment. So actually, I'm recognizing, rather than just being in my head and like you were before, not necessarily realizing why it was that you needed to go upstairs and have that time to yourself, your interoception, recognizing your internal, what's going on for you and the feelings in your body, recognizing those stress levels increasing, being present in the moment, connecting with your body in order to be able to recognize that, and then also having the mindful acceptance to advocate for your needs and to not feel that you need to make an excuse or to try and cover it up. The amount of times that I used to cancel plans on people because I would get so worked up and overwhelmed.
Yeah.
I was someone that had to be busy 24/7, because if I ever was alone with my own thoughts, it was not a good thing. But I would burn myself out regularly. So I would be go, 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 go on the hamster wheel, and then crash for a week, a year, where I couldn't get out of bed, and it would be like I had the flu. And some of my friends would say to me, how do you operate? I don't understand how you've got this really stressful job. You've also got another part-time job. You've got all these hobbies. You're doing a degree. You're doing this. I didn't want to stop because I was scared to stop. I was scared to recognize what was coming up in my body and to advocate for my needs. I just wanted to bury it. But eventually it would always catch up with me. So you can see that in yourself, and you recognize when those things are bubbling under the surface, and you take yourself away, and it's like that factory reset.
Yeah.
Calm.
Yeah.
quiet. Yeah, it's very powerful.
And then they are sometimes very simple little things.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't realize I get I guess overstimulated by sounds, certain sounds in certain situations. And now when I'm downstairs, when I know that's happening, I know when the sounds are happening before I get overstimulated. Now I'm picking up my headphones.
Yeah.
You know, I used to walk out.
Yeah.
But, you know, I have a family, so I'm just walking out, you know, and it was pointed out to me like, what do you keep on walking out for? Do you need to walk out? And I'm like, well, actually, no, I don't. I headphones on.
I could do this a different way.
Yeah, absolutely. And so put headphones on. I did music to begin with, but now it's generally raining in a forest. I have on, and I just, you know, when I know the noise is still there, I'll just put that on. That's all cool. And then when it stops, there you go.
Yeah.
And it just is simple, but it works. And without it, if I didn't do these things, if I didn't take myself away, and if I didn't have the headphones and stuff on my phone, you know, I would never be in a position I am now. I just wouldn't be able to cope mentally.
Yeah.
You know, I am in such a better place for everything I know now from being diagnosed last year.
Yeah.
Everything has changed, but most of it is because of the little things that have been put in place.
Sometimes it is the absolute smallest actions that have the biggest ripple effect. And it takes time for us to recognize that. So, you know, it might not be that we recognize that it's had any benefit for 3 months. And the difficulty with our ADHD is we quite like novelty and newness. We don't like things getting dull and boring. So sometimes we can put in a strategy that works really well. So prime example for you was the calendar, the diary. It's like, this is going to change my life. And initially you get the dopamine because it's new and exciting. And it's like, oh, this is this cool thing that I'm going to do. And you hyper focus on it and you research before you even buy the diary. You've researched the best diary possible and, you know, how to use the diary and the best way to optimize the diary and all the things, and you do it for maybe a week maximum, normally less than that, and then when you get out of using it, you're like, oh no, that strategy is not new and exciting anymore, but this thing that I found is really cool, and then we kind of go off. So sometimes with us, it's also recognizing that even if we have coping strategies, even if they're amazing coping strategies, they might not always work for us because our brains might get bored of them. So something that I really encourage with my clients is having a bit of a menu of options. So for example, for you, if you were my client and we were having this conversation, we have recognized, or you've recognized, that you have those sensory sensitivities around sound. So for you, sound can be something that is really soothing, but you can have that hyper arousal to loud sounds and distraction, and that can make you feel quite dysregulated.
Yeah.
So then we would think about, okay, what are maybe 3 or 4 options of things that you could listen to or that you could do to kind of soothe that in you. So one strategy that we might have kept in there is possibly occasionally walking out of the room, because sometimes we do need to do that. And also it's that mindful acceptance of there is only so much, you know, sometimes I do need that woosah time to come back in again. And that's perfectly fine. And then we might go, okay, so you really like the rain sounds. Let's see if we can find multiple, you know, sounds on YouTube or Spotify playlists or something, so that it doesn't then become meh to your brain. Because over time it does, and then you're like, but that strategy worked so well, and then now it doesn't work anymore. So we almost have to just tweak it slightly every now and then to keep it new and exciting, and that's just something that can be really helpful. So again, with that mindful acceptance, it's recognizing that even when we work out a strategy that is life changing, it's probably not always going to be life changing because our brains will go, I'm bored of that now. Actually, that's really rubbish. Don't, you know, I've lost all the dopamine from that. But this new thing is really cool and it costs lots of money. So it's having that buffer between them. But yeah, just having, you know, a few options of something that you recognize is a strategy and being able to mix it up. So even things like your phone, you've recognized that the phone is a really good tool for you. It might be that at different points you have different free apps that you use that give you your reminders. Or for me, I know that I have alarms on my phone that I use quite a lot. Some people that really doesn't work for them. But even with my alarms, I also have to have my ALEXA, because if I say it, it's going to go off in the background. Remind me, because I will hear the alarm on my phone, turn off the alarm on my phone, say, I'll do that in a minute, and then I'll go and get distracted by something else. And 3 hours later, I won't have done the thing. The alarm went off. So sometimes we have to have a buffer.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, no, you're right, because I say not everything works 100% all the time, and situations change, and whatever process you put in place can be overridden by whatever is happening at that time. But no, it's interesting. I mean, with a phone, I've heard so many times about this new app and this new organizer thing for ADHDs, and I've like, oh yeah, give that a go. And I looked at it, and there's, I think, one I nearly, paid for, but no, I won't do it. And I thought, hang about, why am I changing something that has actually worked for me?
Don't fix what's not for
this is it. I just don't, because if I do that, I'm going to have to try and put all that information onto this, which is going to be a nightmare. I'm going to have to work out how to use this new thing. And in the meantime, it's going to be a month down the line before I know how to use it all. And I'm going to be forgetting a lot of things. And no, just stick with what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Because then I know that only a little bit gets missed rather than a lot. So, but yeah.
Do you know what I find really interesting? At the beginning of this episode, you were like, I've done a little bit of research into mindfulness, and mindfulness is this, new practice. But actually, from what you've been describing, some of the techniques that you are using day to day that you have worked out for yourself, you're actually very mindful.
So I am the new mindfulness coach.
Yeah, you've got that natural, inclination to, and I do think this is what that message that needs to be spread more. Actually, a lot of us with ADHD naturally do things that are quite mindful because we're aware that our minds are always full and we're always very overwhelmed, so we're constantly looking for things to re-regulate ourselves, to calm ourselves down. The things that we find difficult is keeping it up, and that whole repetitiveness of creating a routine, and that can be really difficult for us, and then we burn out, and we kind of that whole thing of strategies only working for a period of time. So sometimes we have to have a plan A, B, C, D, etc., to be able to know what we can do to have a bit of a factory reset, basically. But that's where breath work can be very, very good. So actually, if you're feeling really, really dysregulated and discombobulated, and your brain can't think about what calming technique you usually like or don't like, for me, lights, so my lights at the moment being spotlights, are such a trigger when I'm feeling very, very overwhelmed. I really don't like bright lighting. It has to be as dim as possible, even candlelight sometimes. So recognizing what your triggers are, but being able to go into very, very deep breaths, because when we're stressed, we have this kind of shallow breath, that panty breath, and we don't realize a lot of the time, because our interoception as ADHDers isn't as strong as neurotypicals. We don't necessarily pick up on cues like hunger cues, thirst cues. We can go a day and realize, oh, I've got this really bad headache. Well, it's 5 p.m. and I've not eaten anything. And the last time I drank was 2 cups of coffee at 2 o'clock. So our interoception can be a little bit off. So reconnecting with our breath and going deeper in our breath helps to get us out of our overthinking brain, back into our bodies, but it also really re-regulates our nervous system, so it can bring us down from that high cortisol to kind of woosah. And sometimes for us that might look like not being able to guide ourselves through breathing, because our brains, I have combined ADHD, so it depends on where I'm at, but sometimes I can be incredibly inattentive, And I can find it really hard if I'm trying to control my own breath to know what to do. So even now, sometimes I will listen to guided meditations that I've recorded of myself over time, that I can then, re-guide myself into certain methods of breath, because, we're not always, so it's about working out what works for us and making it accessible. So liking certain things on YouTube. For me, noise can be a big trigger. So there's certain kind of accents and twangs and things that I actually find quite irritating when I'm trying to relax. So it's finding those things that actually make you feel good and don't make you feel like, oh, this is really irritating me and it's supposed to be calming me down. It's having the opposite effect.
Yeah.
That's different for us.
Yeah. I mean, and you also, I mean, I guess it's all part and parcel of it all. Is knowing yourself, knowing what is going on, that this is overstimulating, this is understimulating, this situation is going to make me feel exhausted,
Yeah.
So knowing what's going on will then help you put the right sort of things in place at the right times.
Definitely.
It's a crazy journey. It's
It's a never-ending journey. Yeah. It
certainly is. It certainly is. And even with this now, this podcast right now, this time of night, my meds have worn off. So my head has gone so many times. And I'm thinking about, what's her name again?
Yeah. Honestly, I'm not offended because I do that a lot.
But it's just knowing what's going on around you, knowing, like, so, I know when the meds are going to wear off. I know that's why I normally do this stuff in the daytime. But it can always be done. But knowing what works for you, when it's not going to work for you, the situations that you're going to need extra support in, the times when you're on your own where actually you're quite understimulated when you're on your own. So these are the sort of things you can do. Knowledge is key, really, at the end of the day.
Massively. And we're very good at obtaining knowledge. We're not always good at keeping it, remembering it. The amount of times I've read Atomic Habits and told myself that this book is life-changing and forgotten that I've actually read it before. I think this sounds familiar. I feel like this sounds familiar. I think I actually read that book 3 times and listened to it on audiobook once before I realised, when I listened to it on audiobook, that I'd already read it multiple times. But it was going to change my life. It was going to change my life.
I love it. It's such a weird thing to have. But no,
I think it's weird and wonderful. It's weird and wonderful.
It's weird and wonderful. I mean, I think for me, my personal journey is I don't like it. I don't like mine. Yours seems to be lovely. But no, I mean,
first thing in the morning.
It's strange how there's a lot of people who just struggle. I mean, really, really struggle.
Yeah.
And the life as a whole is just not good. And I haven't had that. But I can't see anything positive about what I go through. I know some people have their superpowers. Some people have this helps me and all that. And it's quite situational. If I was a paramedic, I am good at those life.
Oh, we're acting in crisis. Right. Yeah.
But I'm not a paramedic, so that doesn't help me. But even still, there are areas you can tap in that will help you through certain situations. Be it because you're able to float off in the middle of nowhere to help de-stress.
Yeah.
I am very good at being able to allow my head to go.
Which is great for stress management.
Yeah. I've had a lot of stress and everything purely because of all this and not knowing about it, and it's been the one thing that's been my companion.
Yeah.
Because I've always known that my brain, it just cries out for silence.
Yeah.
Cries out for silence. It just wants to hear nothing all the time. So I would naturally go towards quietness.
Yeah.
And that's helped me through many situations. And I said to you before, I do the old maladaptive daydreaming, and I do it well.
Yes. We can be very good at those kind of things. We've got
Amazingly
incredible
well.
imagination. Yeah.
And these things can go on for months, the same thing. I've built up a whole lifestyle
Wow.
and a whole world and a whole situation, and it's in fine detail.
Yeah.
But doing that has allowed me to cope.
Yeah.
And I know it's not real. However, it's what my mind needed, and it works really well, and it's done me no harm. It's probably stopped me from doing some things I should be doing, but however,
Probably prevented you from other things that you shouldn't have been doing.
Yes, no, absolutely. So, but no, it works for me, and it's like say finding out what works for you, finding out what your head needs, what your body needs, and getting as many tools as possible. Mindfulness. It could be, like I say, medication. It could be exercise. It could be whatever hobbies, anything. I mean, to be fair, all of it can be very grounding and can be very mindful.
Exactly.
I'm a photographer. I go out, I take wildlife photography. So, so that really helps and grounds me. And that's, so.
You're looking at the finite detail and you're in the moment because you're literally focused on nothing but in that second what you're doing.
Yeah.
So lots of hobbies can be really mindful, and I think that's where mindfulness gets a bad rap, and I definitely was guilty of this, thinking it was hippies sitting on a hilltop and naked women running around a fire with witches hats on. And actually what a lot of it is just being present, being aware, being acceptant, learning to let go of things. Actually, when you're doing something that you're really passionate about, that you really love, you can be in the moment. So for me, I love dance, and it's something that I have done for quite a few years, and sort of musical theatre and things like that. I find it's almost like an out of body experience when I'm in that moment, which some people might argue, a bit like maladaptive daydreaming, is that, because it's taking you out of your body, is that necessarily a good thing? But it's a really strong coping mechanism for stress, because it allows us to kind of release, and get away from the things that we're overthinking about. And as you said, that constant stream of 4, 5, 6 narratives all going off at once, and a lot of them being very self-critical and negative and not nice about ourselves. Just having that space and solace away, all of those things are creating dopamine and norepinephrine in our brains. Endorphins are going off in our brains because they're things that bring us joy. They are things that we are connecting to, that we like. And that's what mindfulness is about. It's about recognizing the small things in life that we're grateful for, things that we like, things that make us sparkle, that bring us alive, that help us to feel proud of ourselves. So actually, you, when you're out taking your photos, you might be speaking really horribly to yourself in your own head about yourself, but you can recognize, once you've created something and you look at it pragmatically and you take a step back, oh wow, actually I did that. That's really cool. Same as me dancing, actually, in the moment I'd be like, I'm rubbish at this, I'm not as good as the person, I would always be 5 rows back, and I could never keep up with the pace, and I would forget, because my brain would be elsewhere. Sometimes I'd go the wrong way and twirl the wrong way, but I had that real rush of doing it in the moment, and I loved it, and being on stage, and that feeling afterwards, I'd be so proud of myself, even if I was absolutely terrified going into it. It's that sense of pride in your achievements. And they say that people with ADHD growing up receive something like 10,000 extra negative comments about themselves. And we internalize probably 99.9% of those 10,000 comments, and we replay those in our heads in different narratives. So just being able to have really small accomplishments that have no other purpose but joy, and and just enjoying it, So recently I've discovered sea swimming in the last year and a half, and I love it because it brings me into my body. It shocks me. It's like, I don't want to do it before I do it. So I have this negative self-talk of, you're crazy. What are you doing? You're not going to be able to do this. And all of this negativity comes up. And then when I've done it, I feel amazing because I'm proud of myself for pushing through something I didn't want to do, recognizing that I can tackle hard things. And that can set me up for the day, because I then think, okay, well, if I manage that at 6 o'clock this morning, you know, what is showering, brushing my teeth, getting my breakfast ready, getting out the house? I can do those things because I did that. That's a lot harder, right?
6 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah. Never thought I'd be a morning person in my life. Never.
Yeah, no, either. I was always a late person, and now, yeah, having a son, it's, yeah, you got to get up. Well, I'm still not an early person, but I am up early every morning. Jeorgia, this has been a great conversation, and to be fair, I can go on for another hour. But I kind of really do need my steak and chips, which
I can't blame you. I've got curry in the fridge.
But it's been absolutely brilliant. I mean,
awesome.
it's been a real good conversation. And it's just one of those things that I enjoy about doing the podcast, because I never would have done this without being medicated. Never. Is that bringing people on to share their stories, but also bringing people on like yourself who can educate us, you know, and it is a learning experience. I mean, every time I speak to someone, it's a learning experience, but it's nice to get some official learning, I guess.
Nuggets of useless or useful info, depending on who it lands with.
But it's been great. You know, thank you for coming on.
Thank you. I've loved it, and you're my first podcast. So,
am I? Wow, cool. I'll make sure somebody listens to this then.
Definitely.
No, I love this. That, you know, I'm only small. I won't say I'm a podcaster, but this is only a small podcast, and you know, I do it because it's therapy for me.
Yeah.
I talk about it because I have a voice now. You
and
know,
how
so
that
it is.
That's
it's brilliant.
incredible.
You want to talk about the weather? I don't have a voice. But no.
ADHD? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, but no, Brit, thank you again.
Thank you.
And I will catch up with you. And I'd love you to come back on again.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll just give you an update on how I get on with my shaking and dancing.
Are you shaking and you're dancing? And then we'll come back and we'll do some. We'll break down some steps and do some breath work or something. That'd be amazing.
Yes, I would love to do some breath work actually. So yeah, that will, I think that will suit me really, really well, to be fair. So anyway, I'm rambling as I do. So thanks again. I'll speak to you soon. But for everybody else, until next time, be good, be kind, and remember,